Hi, I'm Paul Ketchum, Assistant Professor, University of Oklahoma, Criminal Justice.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Peck, Associate Professor in the Department of Sociology at the University of Oklahoma.
And we're here to talk about our new book through Bristol University Press. The book is entitled Disproportionate Minority Contact and Racism in the U.S., How We Failed Children of Color. Our book is about disproportionate minority contact, which is the overrepresentation of minority youth throughout each decision point in the juvenile justice system. Typically, we shorten this to DMC. And DMC can be caused by one of two things. It can be caused by either differential involvement, and that would be minority youth committing crimes at a higher rate than white youth. The other possibility would be differential treatment, and that would be police, courts, any agency interacting with youth, treating minority youth more harshly, more severely than they do white youth. It's easiest to think of these two things as a continuum with one on each end of it. We originally hypothesized that about 70% of DMC would be due to differential treatment, and 30% due to differential involvement. Our data shows conclusively that 100% of DMC is caused by differential treatment. We can find absolutely no difference in the rate or type or frequency of criminal activity between white and non-white youth. There just simply isn't a difference. And this becomes important because for almost 50 years, we, as researchers, have been arguing about the cause of DMC, and so much of our policing and courts are tied in with trying to minimize, reduce, eliminate DMC, and not knowing the cause of it makes it really hard to treat. So with that being said, Mitch is going to give us a little more information about our data.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the empirical analyses. And we used a triangulation of data, lots of data, from three primary sources. What I'm going to refer to as official data. These are from police reports and court records. We also have self-reports from juveniles of their deviant and criminal behavior. And finally, we have in-depth interviews of juvenile justice professionals, police, attorneys, judges, probation officers, and the like. What's unique about our data is this. These data all come from the same location, and that location is Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and they come from the same time period. And in fact, that time period is an 8-year period between 2006 and 2014. Now, these official police and court data represent multiple decision points in the justice system. Right? Juveniles come in contact with the police, and we have 43,000 police records involving juveniles. We have over 6,000 cases of intake decisions of juveniles in the justice system. And then we have over 3,700 court cases where we look at outcomes from cases that are adjudicated. All of these data, these official data, reveal a very consistent pattern. Non-white minority juveniles receive harsher treatment at each point in the justice system. Right? At the point of contact with police, for example, non-white minority juveniles have a 14% higher probability of arrest versus a citation than white juveniles do for the exact same offense. In fact, we control for other variables as well, age and gender, for example. At the point of intake into the system, once a youth has been arrested, non-white youth, again, are treated more harshly. They're less likely compared to white youth to receive an informal probation of their case or to have their case diverted outside of the juvenile justice system. But non-white minority youth are more likely to have charges filed in their case. Again, all of these findings are for white and non-white minority juveniles who have committed the same offense. For cases that go to court, non-white youth are 37% more likely than white youth to be placed in custody in a juvenile facility. And non-white juveniles are more than 2.5 times more likely than white juveniles to be sentenced as an adult. I know I sound like a broken record, but again, for the same offense. And we also control, again, for other variables, not just the same offense, but the number of charges and prior charges and the like. These are just a few examples. In the book, we present many other outcomes. Again, the data show overwhelmingly that non-white youth are treated less favorably and more harshly than white youth. The data suggests that differential treatment of minorities by the system. These data, however, in and of themselves do not provide direct evidence that refutes the differential involvement perspective. To assess this differential involvement perspective, we present data from 520 self-reports from juveniles about criminal and deviant behavior. In fact, we examined 14 of these self-reported behaviors. Things like marijuana use and alcohol use and stealing, fighting, use of weapons, etc. Of these 14 behaviors, we found that for 8 of those behavior, there was absolutely no difference between white and non-white minority youth. No statistical difference in the frequency with which they engage in the activity. For 5 of the 14 behaviors, there was a difference, but in fact, the difference was such that white youth committed those activities at a higher rate than the non-white minority youth. In fact, out of the 14 behaviors, there was only one behavior in which non-white minority youth reported at a higher rate, and that was membership in a gang, which in and of itself is not criminal. Okay? The findings from the official data, the police and court records, show that consistent pattern, that non-white youth are overrepresented in interactions with police and the justice system and treated more harshly. Furthermore, the data show that non-white youth do not engage in criminal and deviant behavior at higher rates than white youth. In fact, most of the differences in the behavior suggest that white juveniles engage in those behaviors at higher rates. And we present many more examples and outcomes in the book. So for more context and some insight into why DMC continues to be a problem despite this overwhelming evidence, we turn to a discussion of the in-depth interviews with the juvenile justice professionals, with police, judges, attorneys, and so forth. Paul?
Excuse me. Yeah, we did interviews, hour to 2 hours long, almost 150 interviews. Most of them were with police officers, but we also interviewed juvenile court lawyers, judges, juvenile probation officers, and other juvenile professionals. And when we were collecting the interview data, we did not know what the self-report data said. We were asking these professionals what their take was on DMC, why they thought DMC was a problem. And the most common response by far was that families, minority families, were to blame for DMC. Now, again, a quick reminder, it turns out there is no minority aspect of committing crimes at a higher rate. It just doesn't exist. So what they were describing, we now know, is something that isn't real. But their belief was that minority families are somehow broken, that structurally morally, minority families are just not as well-founded as our white families. And this becomes a rationalization for this over-policing. It becomes an excuse to treat minorities more harshly. So it's this kind of circular logic where they police more harshly, the courts treat them more harshly, and therefore you look at them as more criminalistic. But it just isn't true whatsoever. We had, other aspects of findings, and there's a lot of details in the book, but that was our big one for the interview part of it. Our conclusions are pretty straightforward. The vast majority of policies, programs recommended to reduce DMC focus partially or frequently fully on changing the behavior of minority youth. With this new information from our study, we know that is not going to impact DMC in any way. You're essentially asking minority youth to be less criminalistic, according to the data, much less criminalistic than white youth, and still punish them, to punish them at the same rate, in fact. So this has major policy implications. Our immediate hope is that first others will replicate our study in other areas. We would also like to, study some different areas and see if also this might apply to adults in the criminal justice system. For policy purposes, we need to focus on reforming how we police minority youth, how we adjudicate minority youth, and figure out some way to make that more equal so that we're treating minority youth the same as we are treating white youth. There just shouldn't be a difference. Long term, hopefully we will get to a point where we're able to deal with this a little more effectively, a lot more effectively. There's also a larger issue here beyond just the juvenile justice system, in that we have become so used to this idea of minorities being somehow less than, somehow more broken, somehow more problematic. And our data doesn't support that whatsoever. We have an entire chapter devoted to how in all these other areas of both the justice system and society at large, we just treat minorities more harshly, less fairly. So this is also just one piece of a larger pattern that we see in society. Mitch, I'll let you wrap us up.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Yeah, our real hope here is that the findings from our research inform future research and certainly future policy discussions around the issue of inequality, racism, and DMC, and hope that we contribute to reducing DMC and other racial inequalities. If you're interested in this topic and interested in the issue of race in the juvenile justice system and DMC, please check out the book. I think you'll like it. There's a lot of data in there. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you very much.
Thank you.